Hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you for tuning in with me today. I thought I would do a short one just talking about something that has been on my mind. And it's been a story that has really stayed with me and kind of like a fairy tale of sorts. Originally, I believe it was written by Hans Christian Andersen, and he wrote some really beautiful literature, a lot of kids' books, and of course the famous one, The Little Mermaid. One of my all-time favorites of all, being an author myself and understanding the power of text and imagery and how you can underlay a story or a very serious theme in something that is easier to digest, is a kid's book. And I think that it's a really powerful way for messages to be conveyed without being too inflammatory, but also just stating simple truths or kind of like moral codes. And today I was just speaking with a friend earlier this morning via text, and this story of the Emperor's new clothes. The Emperor has no clothes. Yes. Very, very relevant in our time right now. If you know that story, the Emperor's new clothes, then you'll know the message behind it. And I have seen picture books of it, and there are also YouTube videos here that also have like animated short films, but some of them go for like 12 to 15 minutes, and I thought that would be really too long. So I thought I would do a quick video sharing this and the story and its power and its relevance to today's times. So I'm going to explain the story, and then I'm going to unpack it somewhat and share my thoughts on it. So if you know the story, then you know that it revolves around an emperor, of course. We know that. What do we know about the emperor? Well, we know that he is very, very vain, and he's very fond of himself and showing off his external projection, what he looks like, how he's perceived. He's more kind of fond of his own sense of self and his own grandiosity than he is about really, sharing his time with governing and ruling his country. So yeah, very vain king, as we know. By the way, this story isn't really about a king. Yeah, I think you're getting that. It's about people. It's a metaphor, or an allegory of sorts, where we have people that are more concerned in the projection than what it is they're actually communicating, and then the projection overrides the message, or in this case, it overrides logical truth. And so the king is, of course, very concerned with himself. And enter the story. There are two kind of swindlers, as we might say these days, con artists, who come to his castle and pretend to be weavers. And they come into the country and they say that they can produce this very, very beautiful, fine clothing that no one has ever really seen before. And if they could do it for the king and he could wear it, then he would be the only person who could, wear this fine, fabulous garment of clothing. And it would be such an incredible thing to behold for this king. And of course, the emperor, the king character, is very taken back with this and demands that he assigns them a room so that they can go and weave and spin and create this amazing silk or clothing for him to wear, so that they could create a suit of sorts for these wonderful clothes that he can wear. And of course, it's important to point out here is that what are we kind of forgetting here is that the men have no clothes. And what's important in the point here is that they're not going to create anything that is real to the king. And so as the king sends his kind of courtiers, his advisors into the quarters of these swindlers while they're making the garment, they go in there and they see on the looms where they spin the clothes that there is clearly nothing on the loom. And they are aware of this, that there are no clothes there. But the more that people describe it, or the more that the swindlers describe these magical, wonderful, beautiful clothes on the loom, the advisors, simply not wanting to disagree with their emperor and not wanting to be seen as stupid, they go along with it and agree that, the clothes are amazing. Even if there is dishonesty, even if clearly there is no clothes, because the swindlers had said that only the most intelligent people that are so advanced and so progressive can see the clothes. And so when the king saw it, not wanting to, be shown up that he couldn't, not see the clothes, and understanding this in his position, he went along with it. And everyone around him pretended that he had clothes. And so they wanted to create this outfit for the emperor to wear so that he could parade himself down the street, with no clothes on, all under the guise of being so incredible and so special and so fantastic that he has these clothes that he had to go down the street and everyone would see these fabulous clothes. As he is going down the street, and of course, as we know in the process of this parade, everyone is absolutely silent until a child says he's wearing nothing at all. And so that right there is the conclusion of the story and the message that it is trying to communicate. And I've been thinking about this a lot with where the world has gone, where there isn't really any consensus on reality anymore, where the idea or the concept of something, even if it is completely false, and comes from a place that is incredibly predatory and sinister, can still be projected in a kind of groupthink way where no one wants to call it out as a simple truth. And I thought this would be very powerful to reflect on at this time where we have this kind of Pride Month thing going on at the moment. And that's why this folk tale has kind of really come into my head. And so when we think about the story, we have to think about the correspondence of things. So the clothes, obviously, what do they represent? Well, the clothes represent the concept and opinions and the attitudes and the ideas of things. They are the projection of something that was said to be there, but it was not there. Okay? Now, if we think about the emperor who's fond of, changing into these clothes, his pursuit of a concept to be the most innovative person was what drove everyone else's narrative around him, because no one wanted to disagree with their king, because that could, if you stick up your head, you could get your head chopped off. So they went silent, or his court went silent, because they wanted to go along with something that isn't real. And that is right there, the point of the story is that it is very difficult to sustain something that isn't real. And so as the story, progresses, we see that as he goes outside and is parading himself around, we understand that the only person that pointed out this falsity, in this case, and the grandiosity that was going on, was a child. You weren't able to pull the wool over a simple child's eyes in that regard, because the child knew that there were no clothes on him. There was nothing of any real truth there to begin with. And that is a very powerful message that we're kind of coming into, where we see that things can go on around us in the world that are clearly sick, that are clearly degenerate, that are clearly, utterly insane. But you see, no one would want to point that out because they'd be scared to be silenced or hurt or destroyed. And you see, the child that pointed out this obvious truth, he did it because there is no benefit for him to not tell the truth. He was completely unencumbered by his relationship to the emperor. And that is why the child was able to say, he's not wearing anything. This is a representation of innocence and love and truth within the child that could stand there and just speak up without the risk of looking foolish to everyone, because he had no neck in the game. He had no fear of loss. And as we know, on a spiritual level, all fear is fear of loss. So when one has nothing to fear, they've got nothing to lose, they've got nothing to fear, because there is nothing to lose. And that is a very interesting story that's always stayed with me, and I just wanted to share it here with you as well. I also remember at one stage I was going to consider studying psychology, only to find that I found it incredibly really kind of outdated, to be honest. And I found it quite inhumane in a lot of its practices. And one of the very famous experiments that was conducted that I do remember studying in high school was a psychologist named Solomon Arks. And he performed a very famous experiment back in the 1950s that was related to peer pressure, and was even able to really clarify and show that even an intelligent and clear-minded person is still able to discard truth and evidence that is before their own eyes, so that they can socially fit the group's opinion in the experiment. Now, if you know that experiment, you'll know that there were a series of lines that were drawn on a board, and some of which were different levels, like different lengths. And everyone in the room that was put there, a series of people, were all told to verbalize which one was the shortest and which one was the longest of these lines that were drawn on the board. Now, some of the people that were in the experiment were actually planted there by the psychologist, the professor, because they were going to clearly say one was longer or shorter than A or B. And so those people that were put in the experiment were there really to act on his behalf, to sway the judgment of other people to conform to what they think. And so what they found was in the conclusion of that experiment was that 75% of the text subjects that were swayed were all swayed by the pressure to conform. And Ash was able to demonstrate scientifically, as we know, science is only the measurement of something. And as an occultist or a very, very spiritual person, we know that science is only the measurement of something. And we know that humans can only measure something by the tools in which they can create to measure it. Obviously, we know that there are way, way more things going on out there in the universe and in life that we simply don't have the ability to measure. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward, and that's what I'm saying here, is that the emperor's clothes is a perfect analogy to people believing in something that isn't real and going along with something, even if the narrative could be harmful to them or their kids or families, all under the guise of what we would now call groupthink. And so that's really quite a very, very powerful and a very historical folk tale about conformity. And when we're around people where it's in our best interest to agree with them, even when we know clearly that they are wrong, our own sense of self-preservation and not being targeted and blurting out the truth, the risk of that would come with that overrides our own sense of reality to conform to a group, basically a group indoctrination. So we have to be willing to question everything and question everyone. We need to have critical thinking. We need to have subjective thinking, okay? And we need to tell the truth regardless of whether that is popular or an unpopular opinion. We must have this. To silence someone is to not let them speak, but that's just another form of control. And as we know in the American government, Democrats decided, even with their troops, with certain when they were setting up their government system in the United States, we know that in Congress they created a freedom of speech to pass, because they knew that one has to have the ability to speak without fear of consequence to be able to have a whole projection of a picture of reality. Otherwise, we're going to have tyrants or people above that can sway us into a narrative that is in their best interests. And that's why this tale is so powerful, because it really speaks to the social pressures to conform. Groupthink is a real phenomenon, and it has dire consequences in the world. Okay, accidents happen, things go wrong, and it creates blind spots. And we know that there are blind spots there because we haven't looked there yet. Okay, even certain things now to this day in the world, like Pearl Harbor and the Challenger space shuttle that got destroyed. We know that things like groupthink had a part to play in the destruction of certain parts of our history on this earth. So avoiding oversights because we don't question things is dangerous. And in the church, the title, the devil's advocate, this is an appointed role that is given to someone within the church that they take into consideration, even if their opinion is an unpopular counterposition in a discussion. It is important that we must look and consider all of the angles of things. Okay? There was a very famous Korean airliner crash as well, where I think it was over 300 people died because they didn't question their captain when they knew that something was wrong. So what I'm saying is, stop following the crowd. Okay? Stop following what other people think. Think for yourself. Don't be lazy. Trace the cords back to the wall and see where they lead. Because what you'll find in some cases, a lot of these cords that you think of, things that are set up within your council, within your government, within your own communities, they were never plugged in to begin with. Okay? People can misrepresent themselves. All right? So this is the message that I wanted to share today. The emperor has no clothes. In relation to there being no consensus on reality, and whatever narrative I make up in my head, now everyone else has to go along with that, and if they don't, then I'm the victim. That is another form of control. There is a lot of power in playing a victim. Okay? And we know that these things trickle down over time. And yes, we are talking about wokey culture here. Yes, we are talking about the degeneration of our generation on many levels. So I really encourage people to think for yourself, and it's not all about going along with the crowd just so you can fit in. One of the things that I will share with you as I kind of put on my spiritual occult hat here is that one of the things that I have noticed is, because I'm quite detached from a lot of social groups anyway, I'm quite dissonant about a lot of people and groups anyway, is that humans, yes, we are a social species. Yes, we are an interdependent species. That means we need other people to survive, okay? And so what we have here is we must play a part in some level of something that's connected to other people, but sometimes in a lot of cases, it really is at the detriment of your own health, of people's health. Because one of the things that I've learned, and I'm sharing this here with you now, it doesn't matter whether it is a bikie club gang group that's plotting to murder people and get drugs and have some kind of drug, trafficking thing happening. It doesn't matter whether it's the Ku Klux Klan. It doesn't matter whether it is the local crochet group where the elderly women knit. Humans need connection. And what happens is their need for connection and to fit in, to be a part of something so that they can survive, will override the message of what the group is doing. It's not about going to church every Sunday. A lot of these churchgoers are some of the most evil people you'd ever meet in your life. But they go to church every Sunday because they get to have a gossip, they get to have a meal, a little drink, have some cake, and they all sit around and talk and gossip and connect. It is about the need for connection, the need for a human to conform to a group's ideologies, even if those ideologies are just straight up fucking evil. It doesn't matter. That is what the human needs. And their need for survive will override the narrative that the group is going in that direction. And so the more people that abide by that group thinking, the group's way of being, that is the direction the narrative heads in. Because we know that it is a numbers game. That's why the show Survivor, every week someone goes home, that's a micro climate of the real world. Is that every group has leaders, performers, people that sit back in the middle, don't talk, people that really hang at the back and do nothing, as little as possible. Every week someone's going to have to go home. Every week someone's under the bus. That's a workplace. Okay? That's why the show's so successful, because it emulates our reality in social groups back to us. And it's not going to change. Okay? As I've said before, and I'll say it again, the natural state of a human is with other humans. And any human that is alone will be in some state of atrophication. And it's not even up for debate. It is just simple truth. It's obvious. So, Emperor's New Clothes, please take the time to consider what I've said here and question and think for yourself. If something doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't right. All right? Sending lots of love and support. And no, I wasn't talking about the Empress clothes. I think you get that. Please leave a comment below if you feel so inclined, and I will see you in the next podcast. Okay, take care. Okay, bye.